Hi guys, I welcome you all to today's session on 5 MCQs a day series which we are running for the economics and social issues portion, which is relevant for RBI Grade B, NABARD Grade A and SEBI Grade A examination. And the topic which we are going to cover today is India and Convention to the Biodiversity, that is CBD. So let's start our discussion with the topic India and Convention on Biological Diversity. So let's start with the first question. Which of the following is our objectives of Convention on Biological Diversity? The conservation of biological diversity, the sustainable use of the components of biological diversity, the fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of the utilization of genetic resources. The options are 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 1 and 3, all of the above or none of the above. So guys, if we talk about the Convention on Biological Diversity or CBD, it is one of the key agreements which was adopted during the Earth Summit. And this Earth Summit, it was held in the Rio de Janeiro in Brazil and in 1992. It is the first comprehensive global agreement which addresses all the aspects related to biodiversity. So if you are asked about any sort of a convention which deals with all the different aspects of biodiversity, then this is that convention, that is CBD. So this CBD entered into force on 29 December 1993. So it came into force in 1993. It was adopted in 1992, and after the required ratification, it came into force in 1993. And it has three main objectives. So what are these three main objectives? The conservation of biological diversity, sustainable use of the different components of the biological diversity, fair and equitable sharing of the benefits which arise out of the utilization of genetic resources. So it talks about conserving the diversity, it talks about sustainable use of the diversity, and it also talks about sharing the benefits of the diversity with others. So these are the three broad objectives which we must remember about CBD. So this convention was opened for signature on 5th June 1992 at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, which is the Rio Earth Summit, about which we have just learnt on the previous slide. The CBD was inspired by the world community's growing commitment to sustainable development. So we are all aware how the world is committed towards the goal of sustainable development, and CBD is one such step in this direction. The first session of this particular Conference of Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity was scheduled for November December 1994 in the Bahamas. So this is where the first session of the parties which are members of this Convention on Biological Diversity, it was held. So these are the you can see here what are the different countries which are parties to this convention. You can see almost entire the world is part of this convention, and it came into effect in 1993. So this is something which we must remember. So now we can easily answer this question, that the answer to this particular question is going to be option number 4, that all of the above are correct. Next question. Which of the following protocols is related to Convention on Biological Diversity or CBD? Options are Cartagena Protocol, Nagoya Protocol, Montreal Protocol, Kyoto Protocol. Options are 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 2 and 4, or none of the above. Now there are two main supplementary agreements to the Convention on Biological Diversity, and these are Cartagena Protocol and Nagoya Protocol. So this is first one is the Cartagena Protocol on biosafety to the Convention on Biological Diversity. So this is basically concerned with biosafety. So it's an international treaty. It governs the movement of living modified organisms, that is LMOs, which result from the modern biotechnology from one country to another. So with the use of modern biotechnology practices, we are modifying the living organisms, we are making some genetic changes, and we are moving towards genetically modified organisms. So it talks about the tackling of the risk arising out of these organisms. So it seeks to protect biological diversity from the potential risks which may be posed by these genetically modified organisms which are resulting from the modern biotechnology practices. This particular protocol, it was adopted on 29th January 2000 as a supplementary agreement to the Convention on Biological Diversity, and it entered into force. It came into effect on 11th of September 2003. Now next is the Nagoya Protocol. Now Nagoya Protocol relates to access and benefit sharing. So it provides a transparent legal framework for effective implementation of one of the three objectives of the CBD. So we have learned that one of the objectives of the CBD is to ensure fair and equitable sharing of the benefits which arise out of the utilization of genetic resources. So we should make sure that each and everyone gets the required benefits out of the use of genetic resources. The community which is directly in touch, the people at large, the different needy people, they all should get the benefits arising out of this utilization of genetic resources. Now this particular protocol, it was adopted on 29th October 2000 in Nagoya, Japan, and it entered into force on 12th of October 2014, 90 days after the deposit of the instrument of ratification. So this is about Nagoya Protocol on access and benefit sharing of the biodiversity. So now we can easily answer this question that Cartagena and Nagoya protocols, they are the ones which are related to this particular convention. So the answer is going to be option number 1. Next question. Which of the following is incorrect with regard to India's association with the Convention on Biological Diversity or CBD? Options are: India has ratified the convention, India enacted the Biological Diversity Act in 2002 and notified the rules in 2004 to give effect to the provisions of the Convention on Biological Diversity. India has never hosted the meeting of the Conference of Parties to the Convention. All of the above or none of the above. So if we talk about India's association with the Convention on Biological Diversity, then India has ratified this particular convention. Further, India has enacted the Biological Diversity Act in 2002 and notified the rules in 2004 to give effect to the provisions of the Convention on Biological Diversity. So India is a member of this particular convention, and India has also made proper legislative changes to ensure that India remains compliant to the provisions of this convention. Further, India successfully hosted the 11th meeting of the Conference of Parties to this particular Convention on Biodiversity, and this particular meeting, it was held from October 2012 in Hyderabad in India. So India has been a host to the parties which are members of this Convention on Biodiversity. So this event provided India with an opportunity to showcase its strength, to showcase the efforts which India is making towards protection of biodiversity. And the meetings, they were presided over by the then Minister for Environment and Forest. And with the successful hosting of COP11 in her 2-year presidency till COP12 in October 2014. So India for 2 years held the presidency of this particular convention till the next convention was held in October 2014. During this particular period, India guided and steered the implementation of the decisions which were taken in the COP11, which the India led. And India also supported capacity building initiatives for other developing countries in addition to strengthening the efforts at the national level which are being undertaken for protection of biological diversity. So this is about India's association with the Convention on Biological Diversity. So now we can easily answer this question that the option number 3 is going to be the incorrect one because India has successfully hosted the COP11 of the parties to this Convention on Biodiversity. So now let's move on to the next question. India recently submitted its national report to the Convention on Biological Diversity. Which of the following is correct regarding the same? Options are: it was 8th such report submitted by India. The report highlighted the progress India has made in achieving the 12 national biodiversity targets which are set under the convention process. India is the second country in Asia after China to have submitted such kind of a report to the CBD Secretariat. All of the above or none of the above. So friends, India has recently submitted its 6th national report to the Convention on Biological Diversity. So India has recently submitted this particular report and it was in news and it's very important from examination point of view. And the report highlighted the progress India has made in achieving the 12 national biodiversity targets which have been set under this particular convention. This particular report, it was submitted to the CBD Secretariat by the Environment Minister during the inaugural session of the 13th National Meeting of the State Biodiversity Boards. So this particular report, it was submitted by the Environment Minister to the CBD Secretariat. Further, the Minister also released the document which is titled as Progress on India's National Biodiversity Targets, a preview on the occasion. Further, India was among the first 5 countries in the world, and it was first in Asia and first among the biodiversity rich mega diverse countries to have submitted the 6th national report to the CBD Secretariat. So we have to remember that India has recently submitted its 6th report which showcases about India's progress in achieving the 12 national biodiversity targets. And India was the first in the Asia to achieve this particular feat. Now, as per the findings of the report, or if we talk about the broad highlights of this one, then India has already achieved the 2 targets and was on track to achieve another 8 soon. The remaining 2 would be met by the stipulated time of 2020. So as we are going to understand in the coming slides as well, most of the targets, they are to be achieved by the 2020, and India has been successfully moving towards accomplishment of these targets. While the biodiversity is still facing pressure, and this is because of habitat fragmentation, destruction, coming up of invasive alien species, the problems arising from pollution, climate change, overuse of resources, but still India is one of the few countries where forest cover is on the rise, with its forest teeming with wildlife. So though there is a huge pressure on India's biodiversity, but still India has managed to increase its forest cover, which is something which is commendable. Further, India has done well in raising awareness about biodiversity. India is a mega diverse country and it harbors nearly 7 to 8% of the globally recorded species. So it's a major amount, while supporting 18% of the global human population on a mere 2.4% of the world's area. So India has a lot of population pressure, but still India has managed to support nearly 7 to 8% of the globally recorded biodiversity. So this is again a major achievement for India. Further, India is pursuing its economic development by maintaining the integrity of its natural capital, and for this purpose various schemes and strategies have been formulated by the government. Further, India has adopted measures for sustainable management of agriculture, fisheries and forest in order to ensure food and nutritional security to all. Further, there are programs in place to maintain genetic diversity in relation to cultivated plants, farm, livestock and their wild relatives. Also, mechanisms and enabling environment are being created for recognizing and protecting the vast heritage of the traditional knowledge which relates to biodiversity for the larger human welfare. Further, we are safeguarding the interest and rights of the local communities as creators and holders of this particular knowledge. So we are acknowledging that there is a traditional knowledge with regard to biodiversity and the local communities, they are involved with the protection of biodiversity. So we are also taking care of their interests and rights in relation to biodiversity. Further, India is investing a huge amount on biodiversity. This is directly as well as indirectly through different developmental schemes of both center and state governments. And this is to the tune of rupees 70,000 crore per annum. as against the estimated annual requirement of rupees 1,99,000 crores. So a huge amount is being spent on protection of biodiversity and still more is required for more conservation efforts. So now we can easily answer this particular question, that option number 2, which says in the report highlighted the progress in making the 12 in achieving the 12 national biodiversity targets set under the convention process. This is the correct statement. First statement is incorrect because it is the sixth such report, and India is the first country in Asia to have submitted such kind of a report. So the answer is going to be option number 2. Now let's move on to the next question. Which of the following is not one of the targets among the 12 national biodiversity targets of India? So in the previous question, we learned that there are 12 national biodiversity targets of India. So we are being asked about these particular targets. First option, by 2020, a significant proportion of the country's population, especially the youth, is aware of the values of the biodiversity and the steps they can take to conserve and use it sustainably. By 2015, access to genetic resources and fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising from their utilization as per the Nagoya Protocol are operational consistent with the national legislation. By 2020, an effective participatory and updated National Biodiversity Action Plan is made operational at different levels of governance. By 2020, measures are adopted for sustainable management of agriculture, forestry and fisheries. All of the above are covered under the targets. So basically we have to cover all these 12 national biodiversity targets so that we can answer this particular question. So let's start with these 12 national biodiversity targets of India. So first is, by 2020, a significant proportion of the country's population, especially the youth, they must be aware about the value of the biodiversity and the steps which they can take to conserve the biodiversity and to promote its sustainable use. Next is, by 2020, values of the biodiversity, they have to be integrated into the planning process both at the national and the state level. Further, they should be inculcated in the development programs and the poverty alleviation strategies of the government. Also, strategies for reducing the rate of degradation, fragmentation and loss of all natural habitats, they are finalized and actions put in place by 2020 for environment amelioration, that is upliftment and human well-being. Also, by 2020, invasive alien species and pathways, they have to be identified and strategies to manage them, they must be put into place and they should be developed. Next is, by 2020, measures are adopted for sustainable management of agriculture, forestry and fisheries. Further, ecologically representative areas under terrestrial and inland waters, including coastal and marine zones, especially which are of particular importance for species biodiversity and ecosystem, they should be conserved effectively and equitably based on the protected area designation. Like if they are designated as a protected area, they should be conserved effectively, and other area based conservation efforts are integrated into the wider landscapes and seascapes, and they should cover over 20% of the geographical area of the country by 2020. So basically we have to identify the ecologically representative areas, which are basically the marine areas, which are the water areas, and we have to make sure that these areas which cover around 20% of the geographic area of the country, they should be covered with the different sorts of protection plans and conservation measures. Further, by 2020, genetic diversity of the cultivated plants, farm livestock and their wild relatives, it has to be maintained and strategies have to be developed for minimizing the genetic erosion. Also, by 2020, an effective participatory and updated National Biodiversity Action Plan is also made operational at the different levels of the governance. So you can see that most of these measures, they are to be achieved by 2020, which is again a very important fact. The points are general, the points are related, but the key facts which are there, like the year 2020, these are something which are very important from the examination perspective. Further, again by 2020, ecosystem services, especially those relating to water, health and livelihood, they must be safeguarded. By 2015, access to genetic resources and a fair and equitable sharing of benefits should be there, and for this purpose, Nagoya Protocol guidelines should be mid-operational. Also, by 2020, national initiatives using the traditional knowledge of the communities, they must be put into place. Further, by 2020, opportunities to increase the availability of the resources to facilitate the implementation of the strategic plan for biodiversity 2011 to 20 and national targets, they are identified and a proper strategy for resource mobilization is adopted. So guys, this is about the 12 national biodiversity targets of India. Now they are very simple and very general points, and it's very difficult to cram all of these, and we can just try to remember the key points, the key words out of these, and we can remember that most of the targets, they have to be achieved by 2020, but still there's a target which is to be achieved by 2015 also. So we can remember all these provisions, and for this particular question, the answer is going to be option number 5, which says all of the above are correct.